Yeah, sure.
Thank you, Dr. Khanna, for inviting me. It's a pleasure to talk on a favorite topic, and I congratulate you for doing a wonderful online course. Instead of Taj, we are sitting here in our own Taj, and I personally feel only people like you who are passionate about their work can do what you did. Congratulations to you and your team. So we have patients coming to us with multimorbidities. You have a 72-year-old diabetic type 2 hypertensive with CKD, with altered mental status in the ICU uh, after resuscitation. And this patient's first line drugs, we start everything, all the inotropes, epinephrine, norepinephrine, and dopamine. We have another patient of COPD with obstructive sleep apnea who is coming from the medicine department with vitals which are a low BP and a lower side of the heart rate. Again, we have to think of the vasopressors and inotropes, and we end up using supramaximal inotropes, add vasopressin to the existing epinephrine and norepinephrine, and we look for guidelines in most such patients. Because once we resuscitate these patients, we do not see a rise of more than 10 millimeters of mercury on giving supramaximal inotropes. We have to think of a multimodal approach of starting a short term and awaiting a long term mechanical device. And this is where we stand today, that stage C therapy for all heart failure that we are doing today after the routine drugs and the gamut of supramaximal drug therapy has been given, we think of a device. And what was the device so far? Most of the mechanical devices that we were thinking of in the cath lab or in the OR or in the ICU in such a patient who is hemodynamically unstable with severe LV dysfunction and maybe awaiting further surgeries is an IABP. Now, IABP has been there with us last 2 decades. It's helped us stabilize the patient. ECMO came on in 2002 in India at AIMS. We were the first to start, but more than ECMO, it was in 1972 that ECMO was first done on a peripartum patient who had meconium aspiration by Robert Bartlett. And this patient, when she had a baby who was with meconium aspiration, was put on a big ECMO at Michigan, Ann Arbor. And this patient, Esperanza, after so many years, still lives on. And she was with us at the 2018 conference with Dr. Robert Bartlett, the father of ECMO, getting here. Very recently, before the lockdown started, we had a patient who gave us nightmares for 100 days, a primary para who went into a postpartum cardiomyopathy. Now the gynecologists, along with the cardiologists, the cardiac surgeons, all of us, once the baby was born, we were at a loss of how to treat this patient who'd gone on sepsis. And this patient, postpartum, with an LV distending and sepsis worsening, with lactates going on to 8 and 9, we did not know what to do. Should we put her on IABP? No effect. We contemplated doing a CRRT as she was going on AKI. And before that, we started a veno-arterial ECMO. And on the third day, the lactates started to come down, the CRPs came down, the sepsis became better. We, with the intensivist, further decreased the antibiotics, and this patient did well. And on the 102nd day, she went home with the baby. So these are patients where you have to take early decisions. These are patients when blood pressures are fluctuating, and inotropes and mechanical ventilation with IABP is not happening. Think of an ECMO, because ECMO is going to be the new stethoscope for all patients of cardiogenic shock. Wherever there is a compromise in the cardiac output leading to end organ hypoperfusion, there is a complex inflammatory cascade. We're seeing it even in our COVID patients. It's very difficult in COVID patients in the ICU that we are seeing in a prone position with high flow nasal oxygen cannulas in them to put an ECMO, plus the personals inside the COVID ward are very few inside the ICU. A patient on a ventilator, we don't think of ECMO so much, but people in China, people in NHS in UK, have done remarkable ECMOs on COVID and come out with very, very good results, because it is the underlying thrombosis which gives a cascade of decreasing your fibrinogen and increasing all your macrophages pathways, and especially your D dimers in interleukin 6. So who would benefit from temporary support? All patients with acute myocarditis. This is where in an emergency department or in a CCU, when you have myocarditis, veno-arterial ECMO comes in very handy. Patients with ischemia, with papillary muscle dysfunction, a post-cardiotomy failure, acute and chronic heart failure, electrical storm, post-VT ablation, hypothermic patient of drowning, they do very well. Drowning patients coming to the ED, just have a ECPR with resuscitation with an ECMO going, your patients will do well. And drug overdosage, we've seen a lot of aluminum phosphide poisoning in the northwestern belt of Punjab as well as Gujarat. And I've been the president last year of ECMO Society of India, and we from India have published many papers on aluminum phosphide poisoning in India in all our 39 centers. So the options available are twofold, the veno-arterial as well as the veno-venous ECMO. When we oxygenate a patient who's got a decreased cardiac output with severe LV dysfunction, and we are thinking of the right mechanical support, do keep ECMO as a temporary support and a ventricular assist device as one of the permanent supports till you can bridge this patient to transplant or to a destination or a definitive therapy. So illustrative cartoons are very helpful to tell us, but these patients are sick. We need conferences like this one, where we can bring forth that ECMO should be a part and parcel of every ICU, whether it's a pediatric, trauma, surgical, the emergency department, a casualty, and not just plain a respiratory or a cardiac ICU. So ECMO is a prolonged cardiopulmonary bypass, which is where we see the heart or the lung recovering for some time on this artificial machine. It takes over the function of both the heart and the lungs, and more importantly, the technology today brings us very good hope in the form of ARDS patients, like our COVID patients, or dengue or swine flu, where we do not see a typical ARDS. Even in those patients, a temporary lung support is where these patients are helpful, along with LV dysfunction. So bridge to transplant or LVAD implants that we use is a definitive therapy, maybe while awaiting a transplant, but one needs to keep in mind that ECMO provides short-term support, and we must have a strategy before starting ECMO on what would be the definitive therapy. So this was our first ECMO on the roller pump, and today we have sleek Quadrox membrane oxygenators with very nice centrifugal pumps available. The criteria for putting on ECMO is whenever you have a FiO2 decreasing or a PaO2 minus FiO2 ratio, which is increasing in patients and the respiratory failure succumbs, you put a veno-venous, percutaneous, or central ECMO. And if there is heart failure, as we saw in most of our patients, which I gave examples, you do a veno-arterial ECMO. ECMO centers in India have grown by leaps and bounds. We started with 2 centers till 2010. Today, in 2020, we have 39 robust centers. Gangaram Hospital, Apollo, Calcutta, Apollo, even Delhi is doing good ones, but it is the Fortis hospitals which have taken over, particularly in Chennai, for ECMO Society of India has been formed with the SWAC-ELSO chapter, wherein we have more than 102 international faculty coming in, and we have regular meetings. We just concluded one of our meetings with Euro-ELSO. AIMS experience started in 2002 till 2010, dismissal results, 70% mortality. Then we started, you can see the mortality was 66.6%. In that small numbers that we did, 65 of them, we published, we started to use ECHO, we started to use point of care testing, and today we have 70% survival and 30% or 28% mortality. We took care of the complications due to the circuit, the cannulas, the bleeding, the heat exchangers, the oxygenator, and the bladder. The entire ECMO hardware causes a lot of complications, and bleeding and infection in our scenario, which we found at AIMS and even globally, is the worst. Around the cannulae, you'll have casts forming or thrombi forming. This thrombi, especially in veno-arterial ECMO, will give rise to stunning of the LV. The LV needs to be opened up. LV vent is put in by a balloon atrial septostomy or maybe directly into the LA appendage, and we may have to shift the patient to the cath lab for this. But echo, we've seen, whether it is in deciding the right kind of patient, in maintaining our cannulas and monitoring our patients, especially the LV and the RV function, which seems to be failing because migration of cannulas happens very often, creating a left to right or a right to left shunt. And therefore, how to do LV venting at the right time is what is the success. Also, to prevent bleeding, you must have a point of care testing done. Rule out an ultrasound of the head if you see the intracranial dimensions in the abdomen or the head rising. If you see that, do an ultrasound or a CT. Rule out a hypoxia on CT, and also rule out any bleeding from the endotracheal tube, or even in an awake patient from any side. Intraperitoneal bleeds may happen besides intracranial bleeds, and do echoes to see the widening of your IVC and your hepatic venous flow. Because a reversal of the hepatic venous flow means your right side is getting affected. The pulmonary artery hypertension, once it happens, will require so many more inotropes. You may not want to give so many drugs to obtain this PAH. So keep seeing this. We've started to use ECMO directly on our patients of L-Kappa, of DTGA with intact ventricular septum, of obstructive TA-PVCs, and in all the 953, we are closing 1,000 very soon. Hopefully, if the lockdown does not happen and is open soon, we would be crossing 1,000 patients by 2020. We've had a survival of nearly 68.8% and a mortality of about 31. When we put in at the right time the cannulas for ECMO and come off on ECMO instead of from the bypass, and shift this patient on ECMO in the ICU for 4 to 5 hours and close the ECMO and decannulate the patient in 3 to 4 hours. Our patients have done well because sepsis is taken care of, and that time is not lost from the last to the putting of the cannulas, and therefore that is the time when the cardiac output drops and the patient becomes totally hypoxic. So whether we want to use the echo variables, the clinical judgment, or the hemodynamic parameters, it is the left ventricular end diastolic volume and the ejection fraction more than 30-35% when we decide to wean from ECMO. So keep monitoring your central venous oximetry, your mean arterial pressures to be more than 70, maintain oxygen saturations, the PaO2s to be more than 50 millimeters, and in elderly more than 60. Keep seeing your saturations on the blood gas and use the right cannulas. Between 17 to 21 French are the cannulas. You can use IABP with ECMO. You can use all ECMO, IABP, and LVAD together, and slowly wean off the IABP and the ECMO. We've done that on so many of our patients, and you put in VAD at the right time so that bridge to surgical VAD or transplant can be seen. The future of ECMO is very bright. Today, with COVID and ECMO taking center stage in most countries, including India, we've had ECMO retrievals done in the Calcutta Medica Specialty Hospital. About 5 of them have been done in recent times. We've had the ECMO Society of India headquarters, Bombay, with Dr. Venkat Goyal and Dr. Pranay Ojha come with ECMO. We've had 3 ECMOs put in post-cardiac surgical patients at AIIMS recently, last month, and we lost 2. We've retained 1, but that's the learning on the COVID patient, which will help. What has helped in the future is this portable ECMO, the eCPR, which is a cardio help, which is portable, and you can put it onto the cannulas, the percutaneous one, and it is a single platform which helps put in ECMO at a very with speed, and cardiac insufficiency and respiratory insufficiency is taken care of. So ECMO in LV dysfunction serves as a bridge to VAD. VADs that we know of today are percutaneous. The VAD history is a big one. With shortage of time, I would not like to go into the details, but the pump output flow can be pulsatile or non-pulsatile. With the need for VADs going up in the last decade, we are here as indications for destination therapy, for bridge to candidacy, for bridge to recovery, where we do a reverse remodeling of unloading the heart, and it could be a short-term or a long-term VAD. And bridge to transplant is, especially the lung transplant and the cardiac transplant, is where we are using ventricular assist devices in a big way. So decide in your acute LV dysfunction and heart failure and cardiogenic shock, what is the indication? Start with an ECMO, go on to a VAD. You could put a LVAD surgically, or you could put an LVAD or an RVAD percutaneously. The VAD that you choose, the team should be very well versed on. So many VADs are available. We at AIIMS are presently not available with Impella, but we're using the Heartware 3. And LVADs remains, whether we use it as increasingly for bridge to transplant. In India, we are still in the learning phase, but so many centers down south in Chennai and Bangalore have done wonders. And bridge to recovery is usually difficult and uncertain, but bridge to decision on the LVAD is something which literature is proving to be a very, very positive sign. You must be aware, and all of us look out for bleeding as one of the main complications with right heart failures, in RVADs, renal failures, respiratory failures, a lot of cardiac arrhythmias one sees, and ongoing ischemia with hemorrhage is also one of the things that one should be very careful about. So the circuit here, whether you're using a portable one or a percutaneous one, the power source, the batteries, the wall unit, the controller unit at the computer should all be checked and cross-checked by multiple teams. See the power modules and the batteries. The batteries are something that go off very, very fast even while you're putting them, and the transplant ends and the batteries get discharged. So this is where certain factors need to be taken care of, along with sepsis and hemorrhage. Psychosocial factors of having a transplant done should not be a social stigma. Small rotary pumps like Impella are easily to be put and can be put through the femoral route in the cath lab, and very easy to use and easy to remove. This is used even to LV stunning can be undone, the LV venting can be done. Hemolysis is one of the major disadvantages with the 2.5 as well as the 5 Impella, and it is difficult to place in settings of severe peripheral vascular disease. But in Germany, where they've used it very, very robustly in the cardiac patients for cardiogenic shock and LV dysfunction, Impella is proving to be, both Impella 2.5 as well as 5 is proving to be one LVAD.
Dr. Malhotra, I'm sorry to interrupt, ma'am. Kindly conclude your slide. We are running out of time.
Yes, last couple of slides. The tandem heart transeptal LA with Impella and tandem heart LV decompression, as I told about ECMO, is a must. Cost is where we don't use it. This is a chart which I tell my fellows one must know when you're thinking of one of the best mechanical devices to put in. We've had so many resuscitation programs at AIIMS with the AHA, and we have our own AIIMS resuscitation program today. I would like to summarize that pumps surgically implanted at tertiary care centers only, though you can retrieve the patients on ECMO and put in a dedicated center, the LVADs or the RVADs. The quality of life benefits with mortality benefits have been there. Presently, ECMO is used as an invasive procedure with significant risk and should be used only after cardiac evaluation. It continues to hold an important place in sick patients, especially the children, and in the future with increased experience and with circuits coming on which are bonded with nitric oxide and heparin, and the new circuit like TY-NYC from Taiwan, we'll see less bleeding, less hemorrhage, and with heparin being given away and heparin alternatives available, ECMO and LV dysfunction will serve as a very good bridge to LVAD and destination therapy. So we hold our online fellowships for the last 4 years. About 400 patients, 399 to be precise, have finished ECMO fellowships this year, 2020, so far, online basis from all across the globe. Cardiac critical care, echo, cardiodiabetes, and cardiac nutrition are some of our, with patient blood management, some of our online fellowships, which we've been doing from the Simulation Society with Bus4Health. These are some of our books, which I wrote along with our faculties from cardiac anesthesia and critical care from across the country and across everyone. I thank Dr. Khanna, and I wish APWIC in the future more than just online, and a bigger patronage of 10,000 is a big clap to you, Dr. Khanna. My congratulations again. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to showcase my results. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Poonam. It was really wonderful, and we hope to work with you and your society in future as well.